What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Taking Command with Josh Taylor, the YouTube channel. And on this episode, with the recent signing of Trai Turner, I really wanted to do a quick little deep dive into the offensive line and just an overview of what we can expect from this next season coming up, because I think Washington is finally done with the offensive line for heading into next season. And I feel pretty good about this offensive line group, and I'm going to tell you why you should too. But guys, let's take command. So after many years of being linked to Washington, we finally signed Trai Turner. Yes, another guy who used to play with the Panthers. Then he went to the Chargers for a year, and then he went to the Steelers for a year. And now he is a Washington Commander. Like I said, it's been many years of doing, off-season podcasts and episodes of, free agency. It's always been, hey guys, watch out for Trai Turner. He's always an option there for us at guard because he is linked to Ron Rivera, but also he seems like he was always available with Carolina, and then these 1-year deals that he's going around on. But before I get into Trai Turner, let's take a look at the offseason, and of course, last year's group. Now, big noticeable moves in the offseason was cutting Ereck Flowers, who was this great value pickup for us. He was terrible with the Giants. He was great for us, went to Miami, came back, was good for us again. But we cut Ereck Flowers. And like I said, it was just a great value. We got a lot of good use out of Ereck Flowers on, friendly deals. And he was great for us. I think he showed what he could be with us, but I think it was time to move on. And I feel really good about some of these additions that we did get. And of course, another big one is All-Pro Brandon Sheriff going to Jacksonville Jaguars. Part of that rebuild, that free agency of just a ton of money spending for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but still, I loved Brandon Sheriff. I loved him as a player and as, for Washington, just off the field, the kind of guy he was, efficient, big country boy, the kind of offensive lineman I like. Just kind of has that Big Ten vibe of just a big guy, but he did have the injuries and he was a lot of money, playing on the tag. But like I said, with these injuries, he wasn't always available. And sometimes, what they say, the best ability is availability. And Brandon Sheriff didn't have that sometimes. So I was okay moving on with Brandon Sheriff. Now, with free agency over, one thing to consider with Brandon Sheriff is that we are more than likely getting a third-round comp pick next year for losing Brandon Sheriff to free agency and, not picking up any big names for this season. So just remember that when we are back, around this time next year for the draft, that third-round pick that I think we will get for Brandon Sheriff. But then we also add Andrew Norwell, who's projected to be that starter at left guard, who was also a former Panther, then went to Jacksonville. And he was a 3-year starter there over at Jacksonville. And in 2021, he only allowed 3 sacks. So having that protection at that left guard spot is going to be crucial for us. And with Carson Wentz, and I'll mention that as and along with my depth chart that I have projected for 2022, just kind of looking at what I expect for next season. But like I said, adding Trai Turner. And it's funny because Trai Turner is only 28 years old. It feels like he's been in the league longer than that. He was drafted at 21. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. And I get it. He was on the Chargers for a year. He was on the Steelers for a year. Like what really, caused him to not click? In the Chargers, I think he had some injuries he dealt with. He didn't start every game. But for Pittsburgh, he started all 17 games. And an interesting note with Trai Turner is he has not allowed a single holding penalty since 2019, which is, I thought, a wild stat that I found. He actually only has 11 total holding penalties in 8 years. He has a couple false starts and stuff like that, but holdings, he's only had 11 in 8 years. I can tell you a lot of other guys, Brandon Sheriff included, who had a lot more holdings than that, especially in 8 years. That's a long time. And one good thing about our offensive line last year is it was actually one of the strongest units on this team last year, which is a surprise. I know it's new to us. Just stay with me. Our offensive line was good. And it didn't really show with quarterback play sometimes, or, running back with Antonio Gibson having fumble problems, or just, injuries and stuff like that. There were some times where it just looked like he was getting killed. Like against Dallas, there were some, bad moments. But you really have to think about how the quarterback plays. Do they run too early? Are they in the pocket? How these things are actually graded. Pass protection, run blocking, and how each group is really rated, but Washington was actually one of the top offensive lines last year, and PFF had them ranked at 6th out of 32 teams. And that's with some injuries. Sam Cosmi at right tackle. Chase Roullier had some injuries as well. Wes Schweitzer had some injuries. So we had to rotate guys in. It seems like every single season we have that same old story of the offensive line getting banged up, and then we're signing random guys, and then depth pieces are having to start for a long time. It's just not ideal. But last year, even with that, we still had one of the top offensive lines last year. So for me going into the draft, I knew it was not a huge need. I know we weren't going to go Kenyon Green in the first, like some people projected we were. I had a lot more confidence in our offensive line than a lot of the outsiders. That's what I'll call them. The outside media people who just looked at the team like, oh, who's Wes Schweitzer? They're drafting a guard. Like, oh, they lost Brandon Sheriff. They only signed Andrew Norwell. Like, they're definitely going to draft a guard high. No, but we did get really good value in the draft. That really helps out at the guard spot. But like I said, with the PFF grades, Charles Leno was at 81.1 last year, which is actually really good for PFF. Like, you won't ever really find many in like the 90s. Chase Roullier was at 84.6 when he was on the field. And Cornelius Lucas in that right tackle spot filling in for Sam Cosmi was a 75.1. So yeah, that's as good as you can really ask, especially for some of these guys having to step in for some of the injuries. Now with Sam Cosmi, I am really big on Sam Cosmi. 2nd round pick. He looked really good at right tackle before he got hurt. Sam Cosmi actually scored a perfect 10 on the RAS, which is something that you see a ton of with, MathBomb on Twitter. Shout out to MathBomb. But just the relative athletic score and how athletic he really is. He's the first ranked offensive tackle in RAS history out of 1,108 tackles. That is from between 1987 and 2021. That's a lot of tackles. And he was the most athletic guy. It's something I noticed with our draft class last year. There's a lot of high, RAS, scores in that draft class. And Sam Cosmi is historically athletic at that tackle spot, which is why I'm super high on him. And I just liked what I saw in that little bit of, sample size from Sam Cosmi last year. So I feel good about what we have coming back and then also what we've added. So, we're projected to be, once again, top 5 offensive line next year. We're projected to be around that 5-6 range for pass protection. We had a high 80s pass blocking grade from PFF, high win rate. We were actually one of the highest win rate teams in the NFL last year. So sometimes you just got to really go back and watch the tapes and be like, what am I seeing out of this offensive line group? Yes, you'll remember the Bucks and that pass rush. And yes, you'll remember the Cowboys and the pass rush that they brought on Taylor Heineke. But really, look at the injuries. Look at what we dealt with. But then outside of those 2 games, look at how well they actually performed. So I feel much better about our offensive line than some people do. I think our fan base gives credit to this offensive line that it deserves. So I feel good about this. So this is what I have projected at the depth chart. Right now, I don't see any other additions, noticeable, maybe some like practice squad guys or some other depth guys. But I think Trai Turner coming on was that last piece for offensive line. So how I have it projected is Charles Leno at that left tackle spot. You could always flex Sadiq Charles over there. You could also use Chris Paul, new draft pick out of Tulsa. He's played both tackle spots. He's played both guard spots at Tulsa. So you have that flexibility and that versatility on the offensive line now as well. At the left guard spot, like I said, I think Andrew Norwell is going to be the starter there at left guard, filled behind with Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul once again. You can move them around, put them wherever you need them to be. Center spot, we know Chase Roullier is going to hold that down with Tyler Larson and Keith Ishmael, another guy who has moved around as well. And a right guard spot, this is where mini camp and training camp and even preseason, just leading up to the season, this is going to be the battle. Trai Turner and Wes Schweitzer, who Wes Schweitzer has looked phenomenal since we've picked him up for what he was and what he came from. He wasn't this big noticeable signing. Honestly, nobody knew who he was. I didn't know who he was. And he's come over here and he's really competed his tail off and made the most out of every opportunity that he's had and impressed the heck out of me. So then, behind him, like I said, Trai Turner, He's no slouch. He's only 28, 5-time Pro Bowler. He's here. He's here to compete. He's not going to back down from that right guard spot. It's going to be interesting. I don't know who wins that battle. I support both of them. At the end of the day, if you have to move one of those over to left guard, it's not ideal, but it is possible. It's something you can do. I don't think people realize enough how hard it is between left tackle and right tackle. Left guard and right guard. Just the movements, the feet movements, the IQ, what you're expecting, what you have to look for. It's not just, flip it, do the opposite. There's a lot to it. So it's not just, plug and play kind of thing, but that's why it's important to have these guys that can do both. Tyrese Robinson was another big time UDFA signing. He was a noticeable guy in the draft. Slid to the undrafted mark. We picked him up. I think he's a guy that could honestly compete to make the team or at least a practice squad. Now we have a ton of offensive linemen depth wise. For me, he'd be the one that I would expect to be on like that practice squad, someone that we have to call up later on in the season. And then at right tackle, Sam Cosmi's coming back. He's going to be healthy. I expect that athletic, just dominating Sam Cosmi that I can't wait to see. And then, of course, Cornelius Lucas, we re-signed him along with Larson. Those were the two, big guys that we did bring back. Those are key contributors. Larson stepped up when Rulli got hurt, and Cornelius Lucas stepped up when Cosmi got hurt. So I don't see Sam Cosmi losing that spot anytime soon. I'm excited to see a healthy Sam Cosmi. Now, one thing to consider that I noticed doing all of my research is that the Colts actually had the 30th ranked pass blocking offensive line last year out of 32 teams. That's not good. It was actually surprising because, the Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly. They have some very noticeable offensive linemen. And Carson Wentz didn't have the best weapons either. He had Jonathan Taylor, obviously one of the best running backs in the league. He had Michael Pittman as a wide receiver. I feel like there's still a lot more to Michael Pittman's game to come. I think he's great right now. I think there's just more that he can unlock, potential-wise. So I think Carson Wentz is coming into a great situation. He's coming from the 30th ranked offensive line, where he completed 62.4% of his passes and still had 27 touchdowns last year, to a much better 6th ranked pass blocking offensive line with weapons all over the place now. Terry McLaurin, we hope Curtis Samuel's healthy. We want to see what De'Ami Brown can do. We're excited for Jahan Dotson. Brian Robinson's going to run the ball well behind this offensive line. Antonio Gibson, same. He has J.D. McKissick, who is this offensive weapon that he can use. And, of course, he loves his tight ends. He's gonna love Logan Thomas, John Bates, and he's going to love what Cole Turner can do vertically. So I'm excited about this team. I feel really good about this offensive line next year. The thing that really I think about is, what is Carson Wentz really going to look like? But Ron said it before the draft. We have to give him weapons, and we have to protect him. And I think with this offensive line, Washington's going to protect Carson Wentz. I expect to see a much improved offense. Of course, we're going to live and die by Carson Wentz, pretty much like how we did with Taylor Heineke. I think it's just different, though. We finally have a quarterback that can get vertical, but he's not going to have to worry about his protection. And if he can get out of tackles, he can get out of sacks. Like he's very underrated in that, category, getting out of, this high pressure situations, but he's going to be in that less than he was with the Eagles and with the Colts. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. Let me know what you think about the offensive line. If you feel good about it, if you're still concerned, or what your projections are for the depth chart, what you disagree with me. But I appreciate all the support and all the new subscribers that have come on here ever since the draft. It's been crazy. So keep tuning in, because I got some crazy things cooked up with the team. Some awesome things coming up. And of course, like I said, training camp, and I'm going to be doing those player breakdowns very shortly. But I just want to take a look at this offensive line because I like it, which is the first time I can honestly say that as a Washington fan, because I've seen so many seasons of, hurt offensive linemen just rotating guys and signing random guys. So finally, maybe for the first time ever, we can feel good about our offensive line. So I'll see y'all on the next episode of Taking Command with Josh Taylor.